survey of the room. Has anybody ever, besides your children or a child, have you ever taken care of another adult for a short or long period of time who needed help, and you were the person who did that? Raise your hand. Look around the room. Yeah, almost everyone. Okay. How many of you anticipate that you will need to do that at some point for someone, again or ever? Yeah. Right now, here's the big question. You ready? How many of you in the room ever anticipate needing help from someone else? Raise your hand. Okay, go ahead, and if you don't have your hand raised, you better get it up. Do it right now. Right? You better just plan on it, because if you don't plan on it, guess what happens? You're surprised. And if you're surprised, that means you didn't plan. Okay, very good. So today's conversation with our panelists really, as I bring our panelists up, is really their stories. And in their stories, there is wisdom. And they have three very different stories. And we're going to talk about some of the things. And then they're going to share some of their wisdom and insight on those caregiving journeys. So welcome Jerry, Jeff, and Herb. Okay, so the first thing I asked them to do, this is the hardest question of the whole day, and I don't know why this is so hard for people, but Herb, would you introduce yourself and tell them a little bit about you?
Sure. My name is Herb Magley, and I was a geologist for Devon Energy for a while and spent most of my career in Texas. When I came up here, my wife developed Alzheimer's, and so I became a caregiver, and have been one ever since. Right now, I volunteer for the Alzheimer's Association. I give speeches around the country. People, the chapters always ask, what are you going to charge? And I said, I don't charge a speaker's fee, and I pay my own travel costs. So if you don't like what you heard, you kind of got what you paid for.
That's kind of how we feel about you being our education partner, right? Some days, though, I feel like I need to pay you because you do such a fantastic job. So, oh, what happened? Did I do that? Sorry. Hang on, Herb. I sat on my clicker.
Uh-oh.
That's terrible. Hang on, Herb. Hold that thought. We don't know where we are. Okay, hang on.
You want me to tell jokes? Or?
No, great. Okay, so can I tell you, let me tell them a little something about you real quick.
Okay.
So if you ever go to the Alzheimer's, the walk to end Alzheimer's, or any of the events that the Alzheimer's Association do, and you see this character running around like in a suit that looks like a shark, or a banana, or a
shoe.
It's Herb. It's Herb. It's to just go up and give him a big old hug, all right? Because say hi, Herb, and if it's not Herb, we're in trouble. But I only know that you do it. So, yeah. Anything else you want them to know about you?
Well, the other thing is, since I'm a geologist, I decided that I could entertain at senior communities. So I do, I call it rock show without the Beatles, sticks, or stones. And they still think that I'm going to show up with a guitar. So anyway, I do those around town. I was going to do 5 or 6. I've done 180 of them. And those are free too, by the way.
And so it's an educational event.
It is.
About actual rock.
Yep.
It's very interesting. Very good, thank you. All right, and we'll talk about your caregiver journey next. So Jeff, tell them a little bit about you.
My name is Jeff Gormley. I'm from Yukon, Oklahoma. Married to my beautiful wife, Danielle, just sitting over there, sipping on coffee. So I work at Tinker Air Force Base as an equipment technician. I've been there about 25 years. I have 4 children. And they're great, but I'm also a former caregiver for my dad and my mom.
And we'll talk more about that. Yeah, a little story about Jeff. Jeff is my cousin. His dad and my dad were brothers. And so if you hear me talk to Jeff differently than the other panelists, that's why. I taught him how to walk, just so you know. I'm going to take full credit for that. Jeff was, when he was born, this big. 1 pound, 1 ounce?
14 ounces.
He was tiny. And so he was our little baby doll. We played with him like a baby doll when he was little. And now he's a little big for me to do that. But he is still, in my mind, he's still my little cousin, Jeffrey Dean. So just so you know. All right. Glad you're here, Jeff. Thanks. Yeah. Jerry.
I'm Jerry Pinkston. I taught at the University of Central Oklahoma, college professor, 31 years. Also was the women's softball coach. I have been retired 19 years, and kind of thought I'd get to have fun and play, but eventually got to be a caregiver, which also can be fun, but a lot of times it's very stressful and, as most of you know, a pretty tough situation.
So the little snippet about Jerry that I'll share with you, that they're all very humble, and Jerry is very humble. She actually, the softball field at UCO, the new women's softball field, is named after her. Just so you know. So I think she must have been a pretty good coach, right? Like I'm guessing pretty good
golfer too.
and she's a good golfer too, and a good friend, yeah, to a lot of people. So guys, we have 3 different stories that these guys are going to share today, and I know some of you are here and you're thinking, I just want tips and resources and tools, and certainly we're going to give you some of those. But what I want you to make notes about today is I want you to make notes about the things that you haven't really thought about, right? The things that you go, gosh, I'm glad I was here today because I would not have thought about that, and I need to either share it with somebody else in my life, or I need to make a mental note for myself later, because we learn through experience, right? We learn through experience, and we learn through stories more than anything. So Herb, when you share with us your experience about being a caregiver, and you've been a caregiver more than once, so feel free to share what that looks like in both of those roles, or multiple roles.
Okay, yeah, it all started off with my father-in-law, who was the one that was the matchmaker for us. He didn't like who his daughter was dating, so he brought me home one time for dinner, and fortunately she liked the idea. But he developed Alzheimer's late in his life, and the typical deal with Alzheimer's is nobody wants to believe they have it. There's all this denial. None of the family believed it except my wife. And she was the one that finally took him into a neurologist and got him diagnosed. So we helped care for him for about 4 years. And about 10 years after he died, Gail started showing symptoms. And she was the brains in our family, so this was obvious that something was going wrong. And so I started caregiving for her. Our journey with that was 13 years, which is a long time to go with a disease that we really didn't know that much about. I'd never heard of the Alzheimer's Association until about 2 years after she was diagnosed. And that was a huge, huge help for me. They were the caregiver for me. Then after Gail died, actually it was before she died, I decided that this is what I wanted to do in my life. So I am now kind of the caregiver for people that are in 6 support groups that I facilitate here in Oklahoma City. I also go around the country, like I told you, talking mostly to caregivers, so I probably dealt with thousands of caregivers. And I have them call me up at 3 o'clock in the morning and want help. So I've really embraced this as my stage in life. I guess I'd have to say that I reset my priorities and repurpose my life to try to help others get through this disease. So
Yeah, you really embody it. Yeah, you embody it. You had one more caregiver experience. I just want to see if you might mention it. Like when we talked last week on our preparation session, you were on Zoom because you were in Ohio.
Right, yeah. My sister she's 10 years older than I am, the most wonderful person that I've ever met. But she had a melanoma on her elbow that had to be surgically removed, and it was a serious melanoma. It's one of those you don't survive. But fortunately, with all of the lymph nodes and that they took out, they have not seen it spread. So it's just not her time to go right now.
And how long were you up there?
I was up there for a week.
Yeah, and what was your role up there?
Take her around and do whatever she wanted to do.
Yeah. So you were there kind of at her beck and call while
Correct.
she was in recovery.
And I go up about 3 or 4 times a year and do that same thing with her.
It's the family thing.
Yep.
Thank you. Yep. All right, Jeff, share a little bit about your caregiving journey with the group, either the most recent one or any of them.
Yeah, my caregiving journey probably started, if I think back in 2020. After my mom passed away, they were really taking care of each other, but it wasn't evident that my dad really needed a lot of help until Mom passed away. And I noticed little things around the house that Dad needed, that he just wasn't taking care of himself. So 2020 is probably when I stepped up to help my dad as a full-time caregiver. I actually took an extended amount of time off of work to do so. If I think back, altogether it was probably a year and a half, but I had a good supporting cast. It's something that Nikki had helped me plan for, and my wife as well. They really pushed me along, and so important to have that support there.
So Jeff, could you just share with them a little bit more about the specifics in terms of like why you stepped in, and then what the outcome was of that? Just briefly, not the whole story, but just kind of what the context was, so they know why you were there.
I was there because my dad he had prostate cancer, and it had spread to his back and everywhere else in his bones, and he had previous surgeries, and all that hardware that had stuck inside of him just wasn't holding up anymore. It was degenerative, really, and he also had diabetes really bad, wasn't taking care of himself, and he just needed the extra help.
Yeah, and he didn't want to move.
No, he was adamant about that. He wasn't going anywhere. So, and luckily, my fiance at the time was just living down the street, so I was always close. And I said, well, shoot, this works out perfect. I get the best of both worlds. I can go down the street and spend time with my fiance, and I can go up the street, take care of my dad. And
yeah, so you did that for quite a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll talk more a little bit about the challenges of that. Thank you for that. Jerry, what about you? What caregiving journey could you share with the group?
Well, I have three to actually talk about today, but the first one's my mother. She died 5 years ago on Halloween. Luckily, we didn't have to navigate the COVID because she died right before that. But my mom lived in Chickasha, and she and my dad were married over almost 60 years. When my dad died, and my mom started getting macular degeneration, which I know some of you probably have had to deal with. One day she called me and she said, I think I need to quit driving. Think about what a blessing that is, because a lot of people will say, I'm not ever going to quit driving. But my mom blessed me when she said, I think I need to quit driving. So she said I would, after a period of time, she said, I'd like to move over there with you, not in the same house, but I'd like to move to a senior care community. So we moved her to senior care community, and so I would say my caregiving journey with her probably started when my dad died, because when they had been married all those years, then all of a sudden she didn't have her partner in life, so she started depending on me a little bit. Thankfully, it was just shopping, errands, those kinds of things for a while. But anyway, she moved through senior committee, senior living, independent living, then assisted living. Last 3 months, she was in memory care, had some dementia the last year of her life. But as I mentioned, she died 5 years ago, 3 days short of 100. So I had the blessing of having my mother longer in life than a lot of my friends did. And then I was in a group of friends. There are 16 of us. I counted last night. There started out being 16 of us. We were colleagues, either across the state or teaching colleagues, but we formed a friendship. And we called our name was the Good Old Girls Golf Association. And 4 days a year, we would meet down at Lake Murray, and we would play golf, and we would just have fun for those 4 days. So 2 of these ladies I'm getting ready to tell you about were part of that group. When we were at Lake Murray, we stayed in 2 cabins that we named Hot Flash Haven and Menopause Manor. That's kind of reflective of the fun we had. Anyway, about 3 years ago, one of them, I'll call Jackie, she called one day and said, I've fallen, I've hurt myself, I don't know what to do. She lived by herself. A lot of these ladies either were single or didn't have family anywhere close or had lost a spouse. So anyway, when Jackie called, 2 of us went down to Norman. She had broken her hip and her shoulder, and she's in her 80s. I'm the youngest of the group. My next friend I'm going to tell you about was the oldest. But So we pretty much took care of each other in a sense. So I was kind of in a secondary role with Jackie because the other friend who went down with me to see her when she first hurt herself was her best friend in college. So anyway, I helped take care of her through hospital stay, through rehab. Then we moved her, she couldn't go back to live by herself, so we moved her to a senior community. Three of us, my friend Diane, who's back in the room here, was one of our gagas. Three of us went and cleaned out Jackie's house. We helped sell it. We helped, her. And then Dot, my next friend, started having problems. That's when I had to pull off and help her. Dot being 95, of course she was 88 when I first started helping her. But she is one of those who's very independent, probably I would even call a little stubborn. Those two things helped her probably live to be 95, but at the same time, she resisted a lot. So she had macular degeneration, 4 wrecks in 3 years. Our friend group said, it's time for Dot to quit driving, but she would never have said, it's time for me to quit driving. So we had to convince her. I went through it to an ophthalmologist. He called her in and told her that she needed to quit driving. So that's when she wanted to try to clean out her own house, not being able to see very well. Over 2 years, she tried to do this. I arranged a schedule of 6 of us, and each of us took a day, and we would call her on that day, because she was still living in her house. And we'd call her that day and say, do you need to go somewhere? Do you need to go shopping? Do you need groceries? We would do that, and like I said, we did that about 2 years. The 7th day, her church friend took her to church. But anyway, one day...
It was a group effort, for sure.
Yeah, and one day, she just handed us the keys and said, okay, I'm ready to move to the senior community. That's kind of when I became her business person, making decisions for her. But we moved her to the senior community, and she too went through the stages of independent, assisted memory care for 8 months, 7 months, and then died 4 months ago. So I'm kind of now on a break from caregiving.
Yeah, a much needed break. Yeah. So as you can see, just from these stories, right, they're all very different stories. So her family caregiver for his father-in-law and his wife, so spouse caregiver, and then Jeff for his dad, and then Jerry for a number of friends, and her mom. So caregiving kind of spans depending on, what your relationships are, right? One of the things that occurred to me as you guys were sharing is, they always talk about firefighters and how interesting firefighters are, is that most of us run away from fires. Firefighters run into the fire. Most people tend to not maybe resist being caregivers. These guys run toward it. Do you guys notice that? Like they embraced it. They said, okay, I'm going to step up. I think that was even Jeff's word, like I'm going to step up. And so that's not to say everybody's that way. We're going to hear from you guys. I want to ask the question about who else was involved. Jerry kind of started that about who else was involved in the caregiving with her friend groups. But Herb, who else in your life was involved in the caregiving for your family members?
Well, for my father-in-law, it was basically his kids that stepped up and really took place.
So Gail and how many other kids?
Well, it was she and her brother.
Okay.
Her brother actually had him move in with them and took care of him. So that was kind of it. With my wife, it was my daughter was 16 when Gail got diagnosed. So Bethany really stepped in as much as she could and helped. And that's kind of a tough.
Tell them the age of Gail when she was diagnosed and then when she passed.
She was 52 when she got diagnosed, and she was 65 when she passed away.
Yeah. So, and that ran in their family.
Yes.
And so,
the first one that had it, though, was the father. We went back and looked, and there wasn't anybody else that we could find. So he was the first, she was the second. and my kids are concerned about
Nervous.
being the third. Yeah.
Yeah, nervous. Sure. And so, Jeff, who else was involved in your caregiver support team with your dad?
Well, as I said earlier, Nikki, you and Danielle were instrumental in helping me with good care to my dad. Obviously, even my daughter, emotional support as much as she could be. She was 14 and 15 at the time, and yeah. So those three people there.
Would you say, just out of curiosity, we haven't talked about this, would you say that his friend group from high school that he texts back and forth with may have been part of his support team in the early part of his disease, maybe?
Yeah, I would say more of an emotional support group, just knowing that he had those people there to use as a soundboard and kind of keep his spirits up. All that's very important.
When did he start resisting that? Do you remember?
I would say probably the last 2 months.
Yeah, when he really couldn't get around. Yeah, he didn't want them around or to know what was going on.
That's correct.
Yeah, so there was something about like, okay, as long as I can talk to them and be healthy, but I don't want to see them. I don't want them to see me this way.
Yeah, and if I might add, it's very important that during caregiving, you have to be very selective about who you let in your circle. During those last times, it's very important to put those positive people in your circle, as positive as you can, people that are going to lift you up and help you lift the person that's receiving the caregiving up. It's very important to have that, because if you don't, it'll just drag you down and your health will go down with it. So very important who you let in your circle.
Jerry, anybody else that you didn't mention before that was involved? Was there any kids involved in when you were helping care for either of those folks? No.
My brothers live in Texas, just some friends who, occasionally would visit, things like that. My brothers offered a little bit of help financially, but I would say I did most all of it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I just want to give them context so that as we talk about some of these challenges, a lot of people go, gosh, wasn't there other people to help do this and that kind of thing? So I just wanted you to know, who were they working with in this? So the next question I had you guys think about was, what are the biggest challenges you experienced during this caregiver journey? And I know there are lots, there's more than we could ever talk about in this talk, but I asked you guys to pick out kind of those top ones that ranked up pretty high for you. Herb, I'll start with you. What were the top challenges that you dealt with?
I think the top challenge was all the changes that you go through in this. You're on a plateau and you get used to that, and then you fall off of that plateau and you've got to readjust everything that you're doing. That was tough on me. I don't like change, but you have to keep doing that, and obviously as it goes on it gets more and more serious. And then time management. I had a full-time job. I've got a teenage daughter. Caring for a teenage daughter is enough.
Yeah.
You need any more than that. And then you have all the home responsibilities too, because as time goes on, your spouse can't do anything, so you've got to start doing all of their jobs. And some of those you're not going to be very good at and that's why you weren't doing them to start off with. For me, it was cooking. The only advantage of her Alzheimer's was she couldn't remember how bad the last meal was that I fixed, so she would always eat the next. I was the one that had to live with my bad cooking. I still can't figure out how you all get all of the food on the table at the right temperature at the right time. I always made sure if something wasn't going to be the right temperature, it was going to be the vegetables.
And it sounds minor today, but in the midst of all that, it's a big deal, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You're juggling lots of
It's
things.
terrible.
Yeah. And Gail was, like you said, she was intellectually, she was brilliant, and she was
Yes.
speech pathologist, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was down at Crooked Oak Schools.
Yeah. And then towards the end, then it was you were doing all the things as if she was almost like she was a toddler, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. They try to help, but usually what they do, you've got to redo. They'll help maybe clean up the table, but the dishes will end up in the refrigerator instead of the dishwasher. So you got to redo that. But you just accept that and go on. I mean, this is the person that you chose to grow old with and love and all that, and so you're gonna put up with it.
Yeah. Is this a place where we could talk about the neurological desert that you mentioned to me?
Yeah, it's very tough here when you know that what's happening, which I did, to try to find a neurologist that knows anything about Alzheimer's there's a handful here in town. They can't make money because there's not a treatment for it, so it's very difficult to get those. But now that I lead a bunch of support groups, that's one thing I keep track of is who the good ones are. So if you ever need one, I'll take my Alzheimer's hat off because we can't make those recommendations, but I certainly can.
As a human, you can.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Yeah, Jeff, what would you say the biggest challenges were for you going through that?
I would say the biggest challenges was the unexpected. Being the age that I am, wasn't really expected for things to go downhill the way they were. So, biggest challenges were trying to, as Herb said, was work, time management, caring for another individual. Just kind of learning off the cuff. I mean, it's not something you go into being a pro. It's something you just deal with one day at a time, every day. Biggest challenges are meeting the needs of somebody that really needs your care. My dad was a big man, and there towards the end, he wasn't getting out of bed. And, everything was broken. So if he needed to go to the bathroom, I had to be there to help him go to the bathroom. If he needed to be changed, I had to help change him. And it's one of those things where, as you get older, you get adamant about certain things that you like, some things that you don't like, people that you want in your room, people that you don't want in your room. And so I was the main guy, so anytime he needed something, I pretty much had to drop whatever I was doing. I even went as far as to buy walkie-talkies off Amazon, and I would carry those around with me religiously. It didn't matter if I was going into town or just down the street. And he decided he wanted to make nicknames for us. He was a Tin Man, and I was the Bullfrog. So I carried that radio around with me, and I'd drive in my car, and sure enough, he'd say, "This is Tin Man, Bullfrog." He goes, "Where are you at?" I said, "Well, I'm about 2 miles away." He said, "Well, I need you to stop getting me a chicken sandwich from McDonald's, And I'd already been running 15 other errands, but again, I'm a caregiver, so it takes priority. But it was challenging because I was called upon all the time, but it was a blessing as well. So
At the time, did it feel like a blessing?
Part of the time it did. Other times, to be honest, I'm being real sitting up here. I thought, man, there's other things I'd like to be doing right now. But as a caregiver, it doesn't take you long to snap back into a reality. So, and if you're caregiving for a parent, all you have to do is think no further. When you were younger.
Yeah. So I think you've shared with me your perspective is they cared for you, and it's my turn to care for him.
Yeah, I think as humans we step up. You got to do the right thing.
I'm gonna come back to you, Jeff, because there's a couple other things I want to pick your brain about. Jerry, biggest challenges for you?
I'd like to piggyback on the last question. I would love to have had a little bit of a support group. My mom didn't really have dementia until about the last year. And like I said, she lived to be at 99 before she started having some of those problems. I found in kind of looking for a support group, I kind of found that most of them were for people that are dealing with Alzheimer's. So there weren't really groups where I could go say, I kind of just like to be able to be with somebody else that's kind of dealing with what I was, but not so much dementia at that time. Anyway, but I think for me the biggest challenge was decisions. With my mom, there were a lot of decisions that also involved emotion. With Dot, it was more that she was being taken care of physically by living in the senior community, and then I was able to do more decision kinds of things, as well as so that my relationship with her when I visited and everything that was around her was a fun time, and that makes kind of a difference. But decisions like, and I would say these, in my opinion, are the two hardest. One is, when do I move out of my house? And the second one is, when do I quit driving? And I think those are two of the hardest for people to make that decision. Sometimes it's made for you, but and along the way with both of those, it was, when is the right time, after you move to a senior community, when is the right time and right decision to move somebody to assisted living? Next one is, when is the right time to move somebody to memory care? And then lastly, when is the right decision that if your loved one has told you they want no extraordinary measures at the end of their life, when do you make that decision to let them go? So those were probably some of the biggest challenges. I would say along the way, I've gotten pretty good about downsizing, because each time you downsize somebody, you either keep some things you give away, or you throw away. So those are the big three that you also have to make decisions along the way. So those are more time-consuming kinds of things that you're involved in, but certainly it does involve emotional things.
So Jerry, in those decision-making periods, right, like those big catalysts for decision-making about driving and moving and things like that, difference between being a friend doing this kind of thing versus being a daughter or a family member doing these kind of things?
Well, like I said, my mother blessed me, Doc fought me. So yeah, it does make a difference. If I could give any of you advice today, it would be to be a blessing. It's not easy growing old, as we all know. We have our things that start happening physically to us, whether it's eyesight, whether it's hearing, whether it's hip, knee, those kinds of things. And we all have this pride. And I think pride is what keeps us from giving in maybe to some of the things we're dealing with. But my mom was a blessing. Dot was too, for the most part. She just was a little bit more independent and, like I said, stubborn. She wanted to hang on a little longer. But I could usually go and sit down and say, now Dot, you're having a lot more problems with your medicines. It's time, I think, for somebody to be helping you every day. And at first she would say, no, I do this every day. I put it under my machine, but I knew she wasn't doing her meds right because I was the one that kind of was keeping track of them in her bottles. But anyway, so I sat her down one day and said, Dot, you really do need to move. We need to move to assisted. And she said, okay. So she would get where she would eventually agree, and like I said, most of the time she was very fun. She was a fun lady, and it was an honor and a privilege to take care of both my mom and this lady.
And they were lucky to have you. You're resourceful and you're caring. I think that's the other thing is, Jeff, I'm going to circle back to you. You used to say something when we were going through this with your dad. You'd say, well, he is a Gormley. And, well, I'm a Gormley, and then you say, and Nikki, you're a Gormley. And what that really meant was we're all very stubborn, right? And he was right. And your dad was as stubborn as they come about some things. And one of them was about having people help him, coming in to care for him. And we all wanted you to get help because you were exhausted, and Danielle was exhausted. Danielle worked for me. They were engaged. And so Danielle was distracted from her job, and I was distracted from my job. We were all trying to do everything right. So the challenge of getting someone to accept help, how did you deal with that? When you said, Dad, we need to get some help in here, and he wouldn't do it. How did you handle that?
Well, I probably made a lot of mistakes. Hindsight.
That's okay. That's why we call this the truth series.
Right. My way of handling that was just jump in there and do everything that he wanted me to do, and it was quite exhausting because as she said, there's things that your parent or whoever may be, family member, they just don't want other people around. So back to your question the challenges are lifting, slips, trips, falls. Pride is...
How many times did he fall, Jeff?
A lot. He fell a lot, and usually I would come home from work. This is before I decided to just take off work for a long time and be there because I knew he needed it, but I would come home from work and I'd find him on the floor. And he had been laying on the floor for
a while.
Yeah, 3 or 4 hours. You know, several times he'd try to get himself in the shower, and you can imagine how that scene looked. I would come home from work, and he had gotten out of the shower, and he fell trying to get to the bed. And you know, funny story is I walked in one day, and he's laying there on the floor, just all his glory. And he'd been laying there for 3 or 4 hours when I found him, and he had his head stuck under the bed, and just laying there like a kid would, using his imagination, playing with toys, whatever he's doing. I crouched down. I said, "Dad," I said, "What are you doing? And how long have you been down there?" And I've been there, well, 3 hours or so, son. I said, "What?" I said, "Let's try to get you up." He goes, "Well, I think I'm stuck." He goes, "But since I've been down here, I gotta let you know I found this cool box under the bed." He goes, "I've been going through all these boxes I didn't even know I had down here." You know? So he found all kinds of stuff that he hadn't seen in years, but you know, it was interesting. But anyways,
That's my Uncle Lonnie. Yep.
you know, his refusal to accept help from anyone except, you know, he did soften, and he did accept help. He enjoyed Nikki's company and Danielle's company, and they helped so much with the emotion and the spirit, keeping the spirits up. But as far as the heavy lifting goes, that was all on me. You know, get him out of bed, to the shower, to the room, getting him dressed, changing him whatever he needed. So.
And when you say he was a big man, he was at least your size, if not bigger.
Yeah, he weighed, at the beginning of it, he weighed, I would say, close to 330 pounds. And if anybody knows what that's like when you try to pick somebody up off the ground that's just dead weight, we were both tired. Let's just say that, because I was wore. I thought I was in good shape.
Did you ever have to call the fire department?
I had to call the fire department several times. I just wasn't going to get him up from that place. You know, I'm almost 47 years old now, so 45, 44, let's be honest, check engine light comes on about 40. And I'm not as strong as I used to be. I used to thought I was, but yeah, the fire department, they come out and help quite a bit, and they would get them set up on the bed. Of course, they give them their little lecture, and it's all going in one ear and out the other for my dad, so I knew I was going to be in that place again.
Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about services, resources, things that you guys use. And when you talk about this, talk about what services and resources you used and how that was adopted or not adopted well by the people in your life that you were caring for. Herb, I'll start with you.
Okay, yeah, probably the most useful to start off with was adult daycare, and there's not enough of those around town. We live in Edmond, and I used the David Living Center, which was out in Bethany. So every morning I'd have to drive all the way out there, drop her off, and drive downtown to work, and then the opposite. The best part about that was I got to spend the evenings with her and the weekends with her, so it wasn't like having her in a memory care community at that point in time. And that was we used that for about 3.5 years. Then she developed some behavioral issues, and my favorite became Autumn Life, which is a geriatric psych facility that's over at OU Med Center in Edmond. And that was great. I mean, they figured out what the issue was within 2 or 3 days of her being in there, and she was on a small dose of an antipsychotic from there on out. And then we used...
that made it manageable, is what you're saying?
Yes, okay. Yeah, because there was no way that you could live with it. I mean, she was this quiet, reserved person that had turned into somebody that was running around, kicking, screaming, hitting. I mean, you got within range of her, and she was going to let you have it. But the antipsychotic, a small dose of it, basically brought her back to what she was normally, what I call normal at that point in time. But she went into a memory care after that, and that became a huge help to me. But I'll tell you what, the biggest help through all of this I found was the Alzheimer's Association. They were really the lifesaver for me with the support groups. My support group consisted of, it was a support group where you took your loved one with them, and then they split them off into a different room. And the group that I was with was me and 10 women.
Of course it was.
They called themselves my sister wives. And I decided I didn't want to know what that was, so I never looked it up. I never have.
I'll tell you afterward.
Okay, all right. It was funny because one time we were in there and that lady, we all sat in a circle and the lady next to me said, I'm not getting married again because I don't want to go through this again. And we went all the way around the whole room and every one of them said, no, they're not going to get married again. And they got to me and I said, do I have to answer this question? And the facilitator said, yes. And I said, well, it doesn't seem to matter whether I want to get married or not because nobody else does. So I never did have to answer that question. So, but those are some of the big things. We have the Alzheimer's Association has a 24/7 helpline, and it's manned by 100 trained, educated counselors who have heard everything that you could imagine on it. And I have people in my support groups who call them up every single day and deal with them. Some of them have there's a disease called moya that's a dementia type disease, and they know they were even able to help them, and they called up several times every day. So that was a huge plus for me. The support group obviously was huge. They have educational programs that teach you how to be a caregiver. So, and that's what I said. That's why I decided this is what I want to do. Is I want to help others. So now I'm on that phase, and I'll tell you what. There are times after I get done with some of these 6 support groups that I go sit in my car and cry. And it has nothing to do with what I went through or what Gail went through. It's you realize what they're going through. I use a lot of humor in this and helped develop a 25 rules for Alzheimer's caregivers. And I had them all put them in priority. This was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of active caregivers that made this list. And we have them, thanks.
Yeah, Danielle, where did you put those? They're over there, right? It's called the 25
rules for Alzheimer's caregivers.
For Alzheimer's caregivers.
And it's made by people who are actually going through the disease, so the rules are real rules. And funny, they put I think it's the number 4 is humor. And I used humor extensively with Gail, just goofy stuff to try to make her laugh. Because, you can make them laugh just that brief little period of time, you're back to normal, you feel good about it, so it's a huge plus.
Do you find her just on the support group front, do you find that people tend to put off going to a support group until things get bad, and when should they start getting involved in something like that?
That's a good question, and it varies. We have an early stage group, and those are the people that have decided they're going to get involved with it early. We allow them to bring their loved ones in, just like the one I was in, and we split out into 2 groups. So that's a plus. But we try to arrange these groups so that early stage people are not in with later stage people because they don't like to see what the caregivers don't even like to see what's going on with that. So we try to arrange it that way, and those groups, they'll expand and then they contract as we lose people.
Now, I'm just guessing that doctors and neurologists and general family practitioners, they're probably really, really good about recommending the support groups, aren't they?
Yes, they are. Yes, but
you're saying yes. I was going to say no.
No, they are now.
They are now. Okay.
When I started, you could when we got diagnosed, the doctor actually was a nurse threw us out on the street and said, "We're done with you." Click, and that was it. So that was tough. There was no referrals at all, but we have worked really hard to get with a lot of these doctors, and we have doctors in clinics and hospitals that now pass out the 25 rules and get people to us. The problem is people don't want to be involved in a support group a lot of the time. So.
It's interesting, as a side note before I ask Jeff, is Crossings has this campus and their other campuses have a number of support groups, right? And I didn't really know about them until a couple of years ago when we started doing our events here, but there's a care series that they have, and there's flyers for that over there too on the Crossings table. But they have support groups, and I've had people say, I don't need a support group. Okay, my family member's been diagnosed with Parkinson's, for instance. So I'll say, I would highly recommend you jump into a support group about that because, it'll kind of help you know what's coming. Oh no, we're doing fine, right? And then you talk to them 2 or 3, 4 years later, they're exhausted. I'm like, did you check into that support group? Oh no. And they wait until they're so exhausted that they're desperate when they could have maybe prevented some of the things that made them so exhausted. Is that the case for?
Yep. And here's the statistic you don't want to hear.
Yeah.
1 out of every 5 caregivers dies before the person they're taking care of. But if we can get them to support groups, if we can get them in our educational programs, I have never in the 12 years I've been doing this have I ever seen anybody die as a result of that. Once they get support, they're okay. But the ones that try to do it at home alone struggle.
They struggle, yeah. Jeff, resources that you guys use that were helpful for you?
Well, I think that everybody's situation is different.
Yeah, but for you, that's okay.
For me, I would say I can't stress this enough, is to find good doctors that, it's kind of like Nikki was saying a while ago, there's good doctors and there's ones that they want to be good doctors, they're kind of out of touch. So what I can say to you is find that doctor that will be real with you, that's not afraid to give you the truth, give you the hard truths, because it's not so much that you need to hear it, it's who you're taking care of, they need to hear that. And a lot of times that helps to give them peace and closure. And it helps with not being so confused. It helps you give you a step in the right direction. So surround yourself with good caregivers, but really take a time to vet them. It's not something you rush into, it needs to be thoughtful. Second thing I would say, if hospice, there are some pros and cons to hospice, but it's a growth. So make sure you've got good hospice. Make sure that everybody's on the same page. Your communication is going to be key. So
hospice in the end meant that he didn't have to go to the hospital and die.
Yes. Hospice is very important. That would be the why. Somebody may have wishes that they don't want to go to the hospital and die, or die in a caregiving center. A lot of you would be surprised. My dad was adamant he wanted to pass away at home. So I need to respect those wishes. So of course I had to come up with ways to help him make that happen. I couldn't do it all on my own. So.
Two things I might ask you about. One is VA aid attendance. Your dad was veteran. And so how was that process for you, applying for VA aid and attendance? It was one of our resources, but that didn't make it easy, so how did that go?
That was a lot of government forms. And you would think that would be easy for me since I work for the government, but apparently there's 5,000 pages and back pages of forms you have to go through to even try to figure that out. If they don't make it easy for you, they don't just throw that out there, hey, you have to find somebody that's specialized in that can help you get the benefits.
And when did you finally get the benefits?
Filled the paperwork out. That took a process of probably 3 months, I would say. And by that time, he was nearing the end of his journey here on Earth. And I think he got to receive the benefits of that for 1 month.
Yeah. Right in the month I think he passed is when you got the retroactive check back to, yeah. So, and that was tough, yeah. And then one other thing.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Dad had said that he was going to live long enough to get this benefit, and bless his heart, you think that physically they're not there, but mentally they still want to take care of you. And that's one thing he told me is, I'm going to live long enough to make sure you see one of these checks.
Yeah, he was tight, man, I'm telling you. Tight. Yeah, and it was all about making sure that he didn't spend any money and that he left enough for you guys, yeah. Jerry, what about you? Resources, books, online information services?
Well, my first one would be the VA help. Like I said, senior living is not cheap. When I moved my mom in, and also when Doc moved in, their resources were enough to pay for independent living. But as we moved both situations to assisted and then memory care, each of those stages, the prices go up. My mother was the spouse of a veteran, so she actually, once I went through the process, like Jeff said, it's not easy. You have to have all kinds of things. I had to go find my mom and dad's marriage license, their birth certificates. I mean, there's all kinds of things you have to service records, yeah, discharge papers, had to go find those kinds of things for my dad, and then it took them 4 months for my mom, and then she got a retroactive check. When they first start processing your forms, and then if it takes 4 months, then they go back retroactive and pay you for those 4 months, and then they start the payments that next month. So my mom got a check. Like I said, she got $1,200 a month, which helped when she moved to assisted living. So she got retroactive 1,200 times 4. With Dot was a veteran in the Korean War, and again, I had to go through that process with her. I don't know why it took longer, but it took 11 months for them to okay her pension. They started a pension, and so she got retroactive 11 months money, so it was over about $25,000.
Yeah, but during that time, you're paying for that. She's paying for that assisted living during that time.
Well, the timing was, I started the process a year before she moved into memory care. So they awarded her money right as we were moving her to memory care. So she got the retroactive check plus $2,300 a month pension. So between her teacher retirement, Social Security, and the VA help, it pretty much almost covered her memory care. We had to draw from her savings, her checking account for the remaining amount, but all of that helps. I'd be happy to answer questions after this is over. I'm sure Jeff would too, if any of you want to ask questions about that process. But I live in Edmond, in Oklahoma City, near Lincoln Golf Course. There is a Veterans Administration office. I went there many, many times, and they helped me. They assign you a representative, and that person helped me, and I could go out there anytime, so that was a big help to me. The only other thing I would say is another resource group was hospice. It's kind of funny because my mother, at her senior living place, they got a new chef, and my mom didn't like the food, and so she wasn't eating as much. And so a nurse came and said, "Your mom's kind of quit eating. I think we need to put her on hospice." So my mom was actually under hospice a year and a half before she died, and they help in a lot of ways. But there are also some downsides a little bit. She had a wonderful hospice company with Dot. When we moved her to memory care, they suggested hospice. She had a hospice company. I would not recommend that company to anybody. They were not a whole lot of help.
I think we all agreed when we did our prep session that hospices, there's plenty of hospice companies out there. There's lots of them. So don't settle for one that's not doing the job you would expect, and go ahead and fire them and get a new one. Don't put up with the hospice that isn't helpful. I'll leave it at that. Yeah. Good.
Me too.
Yeah. Any other resources, Jerry?
Not that I can think of right off the top of my head. I'm sure there are more, but
Yeah, and I'm going to open it up for questions. So, but I want to make sure you guys have a chance to kind of dot any I's and cross any T's. Is there anything that you guys would like to give as advice that you haven't already shared as it relates to being a caregiver? And then I'll open it up for questions.
I'd like to just add more on to Jerry's. I don't know how you all feel here, but we need to find a better way to treat our veterans. And I don't know how that's going to be, but
Yeah, it's an advocacy thing, and people are going to have to get a little bit more up in arms about the ridiculousness of the bureaucracy. Any other advice? That was more of a call to action. All right, Jerry.
I would certainly say if you're a caregiver, take care of yourself. It is a lot more stressful than you realize. I thought I was handling everything pretty well, although, like I said, I kind of wish I'd had a support group. But I developed AFib during the time that I was taking care of my mom, and 6 times to an emergency room and different medicines, and finally I had a heart ablation that fixed it, but I wasn't handling as good as I thought it was.
Okay, good. That's a great note. Yeah, Jeff?
I would say just, as these two said, just take care of yourself. A lot of times we don't realize as caregivers, we automatically think, well, I have to be going and doing all the time for this person. And a lot of times they just want your company. They just want you to sit by their bedside while they watch TV. Or, my fiance, she used to sing. She used to sing to my dad.
Yeah.
And he would light up like nobody's business. But it's just the little things that bring joy, even him just bossing me around, trying to mind my own business, just sitting by his bedside. He got great joy out of doing that. So just pay attention and slow down. You don't have to work yourself to death. Once the people you love get to that stage, they just want your time. And there's a lot of joy to be found by just the peace and quiet, just slowing down, enjoying your loved one.
Hang on.
I was just going to say, I'm tone deaf, so when I sang, everybody cried.
That's why you use humor, right? Not music, right? Jerry, you had another one you wanted to add there?
Well, I would just say, if you are like her, if you're physically taking care of everything for your loved one, whether it's the physical side and then keeping the house, the cooking and all that, that's when I would really suggest to you that you think about moving your loved one to a place where they can physically be taken care of, and then you get to have your normal relationship, because caregiving causes a lot of stress, and that makes you sometimes fairly short-tempered and all those things, and then all of a sudden the relationship changes. I would just say think about that. Also things like when you get to that point where somebody says maybe you need hearing aids, consider getting them. If you've fallen quite a few times and somebody says maybe it's time for you to use a walker, I go back to that pride thing. You want your loved one to be safe, you want them to be able to be active and things like that. Macular degeneration and hearing loss can really pull somebody back, and it really helps if you can get them some of those kinds of helps. I'm done.
Yeah, no, that's great. Those are excellent. So legal documents, Herb, how important are legal documents?
She's on my deaf side here, so I can hear what she said.
How important are legal documents?
Absolutely. You need to pay attention to this early on in the disease, like 15 years that we're 13 years that we went through ours. And I tried to have all the documents that we were going to need when we needed them. Don't wait until the last minute to get your wills and your estate plans and all of that done.
Healthcare power of attorney
Yes,
is really important.
Yeah, the medical directive and all of that.
And if you don't have that, you all know that we have a resource for that. Jennifer Wright and her law firm handles all that. If you don't have a trusted attorney or you have one that, gosh almighty, you did it 20 years ago and needs to be reviewed, it's probably a good time to do that, right? Okay, so I'm going to open it up for questions. You guys ready? So if the question is too long, like if it's a long question, try to make it concise, because that way everybody can hear. I'll repeat the question back and then pass it on to these guys. So who would like to start if you have a question? Yeah, Eddie, is that you back there?
Yeah. I had a question on the caregiving. I'm sure they feel that it's a duty, a responsibility, but mostly an honor to take care of those people you love. And y'all mentioned this some at the end. How did y'all personally deal with your hangover after that loved one passed on?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Didn't have that right there in front of you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So he said he knows, and he could tell from you guys that it was an honor and a privilege to do what you did. And after the person that you were caring for passed on, how did you deal with what he called the hangover, right? The after effects of that.
Well, with respect to Alzheimer's, when you're a caregiver, you're doing it for such a massive amount of time, a number of years, and it's taking basically all your effort. The thing that I recommend with our caregiver groups is that you got to figure out what you're going to do to fill that void. And I got lucky in that I was asked to give speeches all over the country, so for 2 years I just kept my bag packed, and that was what filled it. When my dad, my mom passed away, my dad had taken 5 years to take care of her. He went back to his old things like gardening and reading and that sort of thing. But everybody needs to have what they're going to do, because you can't sit around and watch TV and do nothing. So you got to find something that you want to do, volunteering or whatever, and think about this before you get to that stage.
Yeah, that's great advice, Jeff, I mean, was it just business as usual after he passed, or was there a little time, a gap there to adjust?
I would say that my hangover process was happening as I was going through it. I can't really say that I had a hangover process after he passed away, because there were events that there at the end, I was extremely worried about during the process of my dad passing away. My dad growing up he went to church every day. And he had an event that happened to him. His dad passed away when he was younger. And he kind of felt like that God had turned his back on him. And I know this is kind of a long story, so just hear me out. So he lived most of his adult and majority of his adult life not believing and not having any type of faith. And that'll wear on you, especially when you're worried about your person's journey, spirituality, whatever you want to call it. And to get back to my point is there at the end, I got to see my dad find God again. So, anyways, to go into the story a little further, my dad had been really incoherent, and I'm just trying to give you a little uplifting here about the hangover and the process and how I coped. He was incoherent, he wasn't talking. A couple weeks before he passed away. And I'd always go in his room every night, and I'd turn his light off and I'd shut the door. And one night I did that, and he hadn't been talking out in the dark. I hear this, "Hey, son, you gonna turn the light out?" And I whipped around, I'm like, "Hey, what's this about?" Walked back in there, went to his best. I said, "Dad," I said, what are you talking about?" I said, "Turn the light out already." He says, "No, son." He says, "You didn't." He said, "It's all about me." I said, "Really?" I said, "What do you see?" He says, "Well, son," he goes, "I see everyone and I see everything, and it's beautiful." So, I don't tell that story a whole lot, but that gave me peace. I needed to hear that, and I know that my dad knew that I needed to hear that. So, I say all that to tell you that my hangover happened during the caregiving process every day, and I had great peace, and I still have great peace to this day. So, thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. Jerry, how'd you're in that hiatus right now. You're kind of dealing with it. How are you dealing with it?
Well, first of all, my mother, like I said, died right before COVID. And so when COVID hit and we were all quarantined, I had that time to grieve. And I used that time to just chill out, regroup, refresh, and then it didn't take too long until I was back helping somebody else. With Dot, I'm still doing her business because she died in July. 5 days later, I got COVID for the first time that knocked me off my feet for 3 weeks. And then we had to plan her memorial service, which was 2 weeks later. And then since that time, because of the VA help that I was able to get for her, I've had to do this big report at the end of her life, and it took me a while to work on the report, and still, making sure her business is taken care of, her things are given to her heirs and things like that. So I've kind of still been busy, but it hadn't been the emotional hangover of caregiving. So this is more the business side. So I'm not real sure I still had time to grieve her loss. So I don't know whether that'll hit me or not.
That's fair. Yeah, thank you. I saw a couple of other hands. Yes, ma'am. So the question is about VA and who, what, and when, that kind of thing. So I tell you what, that's a very complicated answer. So I think if you have a question, you come up after and chat with Jerry, so say grab her after. But I will give you this answer real quick because we've done a number of seminars on this. Just so you know, Jerry mentioned the VA is a great resource. We have 2 or 3 or 4 even people here locally that will take you through. It's a free application process that they will walk you through, like what Jeff did with his dad. They'll do it all for you. All you have to do is provide them with the documents. The minute you know that somebody is going to need long-term care help, think of it like if you were going to apply for a claim, for a insurance claim for long-term care insurance, it's the same guidelines. So if that person is living at home or living in assisted living or living in memory care, it doesn't matter. If they need daily living support, dressing, bathing, feeding, activities of daily living, 2 of them, they will qualify, but it's very challenging if they're living at home. There's some loopholes. So the sooner you contact VA, here's the short answer. Contact VA, even if they don't qualify yet, you've already made the application. And then if their circumstances change, you don't have to reapply, you just modify the application. Does that make sense? So do it sooner than later, yeah.
You might also inquire with the VA whether your spouse or whoever might qualify for a pension, because I think Doc could have been getting a pension long before. And the other thing is, when you first go in to talk to them, they will give you the list of what you need to bring them. And that's where the process gets pretty tough, because then you have to go find all that stuff.
And guys, just don't be surprised if you're not denied the first time, right? If you're denied, it's because something was missing in the application. That doesn't mean you won't get it. It means something was missing. So don't just say, oh, we were denied. Unless you use a professional to do the application, a lot of times there's a denial. So I know that doesn't answer the full question, but that's a whole hour-and-a-half seminar in and of itself. So if you need a resource, write it on the evaluation, and we'll make sure somebody gets you like a list of those things, okay? Yeah, Bill.
Where can we get a list of all the facilities that are available to help us? Name, address, telephone number, and so on.
That's a great question.
The only thing we've discussed today is the Alzheimer's Association and the VA.
Yeah, that's a great
There's
question.
many other areas I suspect.
Sure. So the question is, where do we get a list of all the resources that are available out there? And I'm going to give you a couple of, do you guys want to field that, or do you want me to grab it real quick?
I would just say, can you make a list of what you're looking for?
Right. So that's what I was going to say, Jerry, is because there is an exhaustive list, and there is a list, actually. The Area Agency on Aging has a very extensive list. The problem is, there are so many specifics, like what do I need? There's a list for that specifically. Herb, what were you going to say?
And that's what I was going to say. The Area-wide Aging Agency puts out a phone book, basically every 2 years, that has every resource in it that a senior could want.
The problem is that a lot of times it's not descriptive, it's a listing, right? So just to give you a snapshot, Bill, one of the things that they're trying to solve right now, so this is a plug for the state of Oklahoma, actually. The state of Oklahoma has a new initiative. They're calling it Aging Your Way. You can look that up, Aging Your Way. And it's basically 10 areas or goal areas that they have. They've come together, they've done a ton of research with private, public, and not-for-profit sectors of Oklahoma, all across the state. And they are working on that list, Bill. And it's hard to compile it because it changes, it's constantly changing, right? And so right now, the best solution, while that's being compiled, is either Villages OKC, because Villages has a number of vetted, not just a list, but people that have been interviewed, vetted, and we know are good. We have a list at the Senior Living Truth Series. Danielle, where are you? You're the keeper of the list, right? That back here. Y'all know Danielle. She calls you and reminds you to come. And then, you have to know, okay, this is what I need. I need this, this, and this. But don't say, hey, I need a list, because there's 100 lists, right? So Bill, if you know exactly what you need, even on these evals, you can write it down, and we can get you, like, options, if that makes sense. So that's a great question. All right, last question, and then we'll finish up for today. Thought I saw one other hand. Yeah?
A comment and maybe a question. Being here has brought up a lot of emotions for me, because I was a caregiver
Sure.
to my parents. One thing that helped me during that time was mentioned earlier. The thought came to my mind when I had fear or I didn't know what to do to help my loved ones. Was just go and bless their lives. Do what you can to be blessed. Even when you don't know what to do, you'll be directed to what to do. The second is, I feel the fear that I felt today going through as a caregiver. My mother had dementia. I thought at the time, oh no, what if that happens to me? And I've kind of dealt with that over the last 10 years, but it's resurfaced today.
Sure.
So how do we deal with that? How do we prepare for that? That could be things that I was taking care of.
So I'm going to use that. So I'm going to just paraphrase what she. So she was a caregiver for her mom. She's feeling some emotion around that, right? But she's also looking ahead at her own life. And how do I deal with the fact that now I'm thinking about, what if that were me? What if that was me? What advice would you give people so that they can be prepared? Just one thing to prepare them. Go, Jared.
Stay active, keep your brain active. If you can find some way to do a little bit of exercise, eating right, those kinds of things are, research tells you that.
Mobility, balance, strength training.
Right. I would also say, I mentioned this before a little bit, that caregiving can be fun and it can be funny. And sometimes it's good to see the funny side. I went every day to be with my mom, and one day I walked in and she said, I want you to know that Linda Kavanaugh helped me to the bathroom a while ago. I think you all know who Linda Kavanaugh was. And she had been retired for a while, so it was funny, and it's just fun to laugh.
Yeah, nice. That was awesome, Linda. Yeah, Jess.
I would say lean heavily on your faith, if not completely all the way. God will get you everything you need. And if you're a religious person, you know this. It may seem unbearable at times, but we don't have all the answers why he does what he does. But he does it because he loves us, and one thing's for certain, he will bring us through this. So.
Thanks, Jeff. Herb?
Yeah, we have, specifically with Alzheimer's, we have a list of 10 things that we give out as a brochure that are meant to keep your brain healthy. But we are also right now, we have 5 cities in the U.S., it's called the U.S. Pointer Study, and we've got thousands of people that have joined this, and they're kind of clones with how their lifestyle is, and we split them in half and said, you can go ahead and continue doing what you're doing. This half has to use those 10 things, they have to adopt that. And we're trying to see, just like cancer did, is there something that we can see here that really does make a positive impact on keeping your brain healthy. And by the way, before we leave, the Alzheimer's Association obviously to me was my superhero. And you know what superheroes do, right?
Yeah, go ahead. I knew he was going to do that. All right. Can we give them a huge hand and appreciate them for being here today? Guys, guys go ahead and find that table over there, and Danielle will help them over. There's some handouts that they brought for the 25 things for caregivers. And if you guys want to just appreciate them, that's where you can greet them. It's right over on that end table. Yeah, thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate it. Okay, so I want to just address that question at the end there about how do I deal with this. I'm going to give you a couple more tips that they didn't give you, but kind of in a roundabout way did. Guys, I think that when we conceptualized the Senior Living Truth Series originally, it was for that reason. It was to help people better prepare for possible life events, whatever those are. And you cannot prevent every life event, right? Can we all agree? We cannot prepare for everything. Even NASA messes up. But we can predict certain things, and so let's prepare for those. And one of them today we talked about is caregiving. I can guarantee you, like with 99% certainty, that at some point somebody's going to have to help you navigate something, whether it is insurance or doctor's office or navigating prescription drugs or insurance or whatever. And if they don't have the legal documents in place to do that, they can't help you. My dad and I have had that going on for a while, and I have all the legal documents in place so that I can say to people, I have what I need, you will help me. And guess what? That works. But if I just say, he's my dad and he can't do it, I need you to help me, they say, what? Sorry, I can't help you. So get your flipping legal documents in place. That's the first thing, right? Get those things, get your estate plan in place. That's the first thing. Okay, so Discover Villages, Jerry talked about having 16 girlfriends that she called the Gagas, right? And they take care of each other. How many of you have 15 friends in your life that would come together to take care of you if you needed it? Raise your hand. 2, 3 people, 4, 5. All right, good. 5 out of the whole 100 in here have that many friends that would take care of them. Well, how do you make friends that will take care of you? There's only 5 left, but there were 16 to start. And so villages, that's what they're creating, is they're creating this environment where you can meet people, bond with them, and then when you need help, guess what? You're all in the same boat, and we help each other, right? That's what that's about. If you wonder what the heck this village is about, that in a nutshell is what it's about. Now, there's all kinds of things to do, but that's what village is all about. So this is a discovery thing. They do it once a month. And you can go to that, just kind of learn about villages. That's my plug for one of our education partners. And then they also do, like we do, a seminar like this once a month. Theirs is called Life Skills Learning. And it is on Mondays. You can see the 2 dates there for the next 2. And those topics, again, they're designed to figure out, like, how do I prepare myself so that I'm a better version of myself? And if you want to register for those, there's a sign-up sheet for most of these in the paperwork you have there. It says education sign-ups. You can sign up right there. Danielle will get you registered and all that stuff. Buckaloo Group back here, our team, does a series of talks on senior living. But not just senior living and real estate. It's more like this one Shannon and them have geared up for now. It's called I Can't Go Home, So Now What? Okay, you're in the hospital, you had surgery, and the doctor says you need rehab. And you go, holy moly, I don't know where to start. They're going to talk about options. They're going to talk about what those look like. How do you manage that decision? What are the resources for that? And then Nerve Renewal, our other education partner back here, Mark and his team, they're doing a clinic workshop at their place. It's more like a tour, and they show you what they do. One of the reasons Jerry said one of the biggest pivotal moments for people is stopping driving, right? Why do you think people have to stop driving? Well, there's lots of reasons. One is vision, but another one is neuropathy, isn't it? And so if you can't feel your feet, you should probably what? Stop driving. So what they want to do is if you're having problems with that is keep that from deteriorating so you can keep driving. or walking for that matter, right? So there are reasons to go visit that. Again, just to stay up on what's going on and what services might be out there, if you're diabetic especially, but there are also other conditions that can cause neuropathy. Next month, we're going to have a little fun conversation. I'm going to be talking with you about grandparenting. Raise your hand if you're a grandparent. Wow, look around the room. All right, if you're not a grandparent, but you are a great aunt or uncle, raise your hand. And how many of you are maybe not an aunt or uncle or a grandparent, but you have children in your life, neighbor friends or church friends that you help care for? Okay, a couple. All right, so we're going to talk about grandparenting and aunting and uncling all of these next generation children. I have four, Chris and I do, 12-year-old, 7-year-old, 4-year-old, and a 20-month-old grandchildren. Yes, I know, I look way too young for that. So, what I've realized is that it's harder to parent my kids at this age. It's also harder to be a grandparent to their children than I thought it would be. How many of you are finding that to be true? Right? I love my grandparents. I was, with my grandparents all the time, right? And I thought, oh, this is going to be great. And I'm like, this is hard, right? My kids are a pain. My grandkids fine. My kids are a pain. So how do I grandparent? So I'm going to be talking with some of you about what you're doing strategically to do that, do it well. We're going to be talking about that next month. And why is that important? Why is that important? Because who did I say a few months ago is going to end up being our primary caregivers? Who? Not your children. Because when you're 100, how old are they? When I'm 100, my children will be 80. I'm counting on those grandbabies. Counting on them. So I want a good relationship with them, not just for that reason, right? But I want to have a good relationship. I want to leave a legacy for them, but I also want to be able to make a difference in their life so that they're there, like Jeff, his kids were there for their grandpa when he passed. My nieces are there for their grandpa right now, right? Because they have relationships. And if we don't have relationships with them, guys, we don't have that support system. So we've got to work on our grandparenting skills. I'm doing this as much for me as I am for you. So join me on the journey. Is that okay with you? All right, so did you guys get value from these guys today? Right? Awesome. Yeah, very good. All right, be sure, remember, all of the education partners bring things like educational materials and whatnot. Some of them have open houses coming up and things like that. So feel free to walk around, pick those up. The team back here by the registration table will take your evaluation form, which is the yellow form, and the education sign-up form. They'll take those from you when you leave. If you have a question we didn't answer or a resource you need, write it on that yellow form, and Danielle will give you a call in the next several days, and we'll make sure that you have those answers. Okay? Thanks for being here. We'll see you next month.